Although murder cases happen regularly, the story of Diane Downs, the cold-blooded mother, is stranger than fiction. This mother was accused of committing heinous crimes of cold-blooded murder. Her victims were not just strangers to her. So, who is Diane Downs? What happened to her? And what is her story? Let's explore what happened on that fateful night. Diane Downs was born in Arizona, United States in the mid-20th century, specifically in 1955. Her family was somewhat religious, and despite being the only child without siblings competing for her parents' love, she suffered greatly in her childhood. Her parents were volunteers at the church and didn't devote much time to caring for their daughter. Diane received education in the church and religious schools. She experienced a troubled childhood, but she didn't suffer alone. She made everyone around her suffer as well. It started when she was 10 years old. Diane falsely accused her father of molesting her, informing the school principal about it, which never actually happened. She also falsely accused her mother of trying to torture and burn her, believing that she was punishing her parents for their neglect and preoccupation with volunteering at the church. However, some opinions believe Diane's claims that her father molested her when she was young. Her father portrayed himself and her mother as a conservative and religious family. During her school years, Diane dressed in mature women's clothing and dated older boys. One of them was Stephen Downs, whom she became inseparable with, roaming the streets of Phoenix in search of fun. They both graduated, but temporarily separated. Diane went to college in California and Stephen joined the US Navy. However, he was eventually discharged due to his inappropriate behavior. They reunited in Arizona and got married when Diane was only 18 years old, marrying the love of her life. The relationship between them quickly deteriorated after marriage. The couple argued regularly about financial matters and accused each other of infidelity. In this troubled environment, their 3 children were born in 1974, 1976, and 1979. By the time their 3rd child, Danny, was born, arguments about infidelity became a heated debate between the couple. Diane was involved with other men and dated them without her husband's knowledge. Stephen became convinced that Danny was not his son, but the result of Diane's infidelity. The unstable relationship between Diane and her husband affected the upbringing of their children. Unable to settle, the couple separated in 1980. The 25-year-old divorced Diane tried her best to become a surrogate mother to earn money, but she failed twice in psychological evaluations. Diane became indifferent towards her children. She often left them with their parents or her ex-husband without prior notice, showing a lack of care or concern towards them. Her sole focus was seeking the love of other men. The children suffered greatly and appeared malnourished. Diane regularly left her eldest daughter, Christy, who was no older than 6 years old, responsible for taking care of her younger siblings. In 1981, Diane met a man named Robert, and a romantic relationship began, bringing her back to life. Robert was married, and Diane's children became just another burden he didn't want. He told Diane that he had no interest in being a father, and the relationship ended within 2 years. After her relationship with Robert ended, Diane moved to Springfield and got a job at the post office. On May 19, 1983, she drove her car with her children on a road leading out of town. She stopped on the side of the road, and what happened next was shocking. The mother pulled out a gun and cold-bloodedly shot her 3 children. But the story doesn't end here. After shooting her children, she shot herself in the left shoulder. Then, she went to the hospital and told them that she was with her children in a car on a deserted road. And suddenly, a stranger attacked them to try to steal the car. When she tried to deceive him by pretending to throw the keys out of her hand, he shot at them, resulting in the death of 1 child and the injury of the other 2. So she started the car and rushed to the hospital to save them and herself. When the police came to file a report on what happened, the doctor told the police that she shed only 1 tear and spoke indifferently, as if nothing had happened. When asked how she was, she said, "Unfortunately, this really ruined my vacation, and there is blood in the back of my new car." The doctor was surprised by her indifference. She didn't care about her children, and all she cared about was that her car was filled with blood. He began to feel that this woman was guilty. The police also noticed something else. This narrative was not witnessed by anyone other than Diane herself, and the descriptions of the attacker she provided didn't match any suspects residing in the area where the crime occurred or nearby. There was another important fact. When Christy regained her ability to speak, the facts were clear. When the girl was asked who shot at you, she simply answered, "My mother." Christy was 8 years old at that time and said that she was indeed driving them in her car and no one attacked or assaulted them. What happened was that Diane herself had tried to kill her children, and she pulled out a weapon from her bag and fired 3 shots at the children and 1 shot at her shoulder to convince the police that she was a victim, not a perpetrator. When asked if she owned a gun, she lied and said she didn't own a gun, but a search revealed otherwise, and the police also found her diary, which was filled with references to Robert, her former lover, and her doubts about the relationship. Despite all this evidence, the police didn't convict Diane because the only witness was a child who hadn't reached the legal age, but God wanted to expose her. As one of the drivers testified against her, he told the police that she was not driving at more than 5 miles per hour, although the street was empty, and she was driving very slowly. Indeed, it became clear to the police through the testimony of the child and the driver that Diane Downs had tried to kill her children and drove slowly on her way to the hospital in the hope that they would bleed to death. Before her arrest and trial, Downs became pregnant with a 4th child and gave birth to a girl, whom she named Amy Elizabeth. A month after her trial in 1984, and 10 days before the judgment was issued against Downs, Amy was taken by the state of Oregon and adopted by a family named Babcock, and her new parents named her Rebecca. Downs was convicted on all charges on June 17, 1984, and was sentenced to life imprisonment and solitary confinement. She was prohibited from seeing her remaining children, and she had to serve 25 years before parole could be considered. Christie went to live with the lead prosecutor in the case, Fred Hughey, where he and his wife Joan adopted her in 1986. Diane Downs was imprisoned at the Oregon State Correctional Center. She escaped on July 11, 1987, but was apprehended a few buildings away from the prison on July 21st. She received an additional 5-year sentence for her escape. In 1994, after serving 10 years, Downs was transferred to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. While in prison, she obtained a college degree in general studies. However, she was transferred again when the facility became an all-male institution in 2013. She also obtained some certificates as part of her parole eligibility, but those attempts were unsuccessful. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with multiple personality disorders and antisocial behavior. Most of her sentences were given consecutively, and the judge made it clear that he did not intend for Downs to be released, as she deserved the maximum punishment for what she did to her children. What's unusual about Diane Downs' crime is that she didn't just attempt to kill her children. She showed no concern for their well-being. All she cared about was that her car was filled with blood. It's difficult for us to call her a mother. She was a cold-hearted monster. In the end, remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notifications bell to receive updates on new content.